All right, so we've been talking about the concept of Resolute, the idea of purposeful action, and now we're at the unwilling to compromise the important. So I want to hit on this. This one could bring some questions, and that's great because this is a very, very difficult one to do, but it's a very, very powerful one once you understand it. So we're going to walk through it. We're going to understand some things, but I think before we do that, let's look at Resolute. It's the process of purposeful action. So when I think of the word resolute, I came up with several words: confident, consistent, reliable, dependable, courageous. Those are the kind of things when I think of resolute leadership or a resolute friend. It's a friend who's reliable. It's a friend who is dependable. They're there. It's a friend that no matter what happens or what situation that you put him or her in, they don't waver. Now think about that in regards to relationships. It's a parent that you can count on even when you do something stupid, which none of you have ever done. I know that. But the idea, it's your brothers or sisters, I know. So it's a parent that your brother or sister can count on when they've done something dumb. It's a spouse that you can count on when you've dropped the ball. Or it's a spouse that you could count on and you could trust no matter what situation that spouse could be put into. It's an employer or a supervisor that is resolute in their actions and you know you can count on them. But let me put it more personally to you. You being resolute is that person that no matter what situation that you're put in, there are some things that you are unwilling to compromise. There's a difference between compromise and collaboration. Collaboration is working together. Compromise is just like, I'm going to give up. Now, there's always the other side to every word. So I am not saying this morning that you should never compromise. But there are some things, the important things, that you should be unwilling to compromise. So let's start with these two foundational things. You have priorities, right? Well, if you don't know that, you do have priorities. Your priorities where you are right now would be your family. That's priority. Your friends would be a priority. Schoolwork, priority. You know, what you do, maybe intramurals, maybe extracurricular orgs or different things. Those are priorities. Your priorities can shift, okay? They can shift from time to time. You will not always be in school. Yeah, you will not always be in school. If you are, boy, get really rich. But you will always have family and friends. So there's some priorities that stay. There are other priorities that roll off. We'll get into how you establish those and what goes on in that. You have absolutes. So for me, I think the first one that comes to me is my faith. My faith is an absolute. It is something that is unwavering. It should be something that is consistent, that doesn't move. My faith is one of my absolutes. It's an absolute. I have other absolutes. I have convictions. I have personal preferences that for me, I will not compromise. You might be like, that's no big deal. I don't really care. I will never count money in the war room without somebody else being there. Because I don't want to ever be accused of stealing money. And I also know that maybe that could be a temptation for me. So I put myself, that's my conviction. That doesn't have to be, that is not always the conviction of our rules, but that is a conviction that I have. Another conviction that I have, my door is left open when I'm in the office with somebody that is of the opposite sex. It's not because I don't trust you. It's not because I don't trust me. But that is a conviction that I have because I want to honor my wife, Danielle. And I want to honor you. So that's a conviction. Other people look at me, they're like, that's the stupidest thing in the world. I don't really care. And there are going to be things in your life that are convictions to you that are not convictions to others. I don't look down on people because they don't have the same convictions. I like to drive fast. My father-in-law believes, it was my dad, he believed that his conviction was you go by the speed limit. It's sin if you go over the speed limit. I think it's sin if you do the speed limit. Okay, not really. But my dad had that conviction, so whenever I drove with him or behind him, you're like, great. But that's not my conviction. I didn't judge him based upon that. So, understanding before we can go forward, if you're going to be unwilling to compromise the important, you've got to know that you have priorities and you got to know that you have absolutes. So what do these things do for us? Well, your priorities and your absolutes provide direction, focus, meaning, and accountability. So when I have priorities and I have absolutes, it provides direction for me. Because I know what I believe, I know what's important to me, now I know where I'm going. If I say my family is a priority, which they are, but I never show up at home until 9 o'clock at night when they're all in bed, I'm not demonstrating that that's a priority. If I say my involvement at church is a priority, but I make work more important than church, I'm not demonstrating that church is a priority. You could go through that. So it provides directions, it provides focus. So for me, there are times that this job gets to the place where there's so many things that just did not get done today, but the focus of my priorities and my absolutes drive me to my house so that I'm there with my family. It also provides meaning. So why am I doing all these things? What's the point? It's not about the paycheck. It's not about what is happening. It's about what are my priorities and my absolutes driving that meaning. So as a Christian, Matthew 5:16, let your light so shine before others so that they can see your good works and glorify your God that's in heaven. There's the meaning. When I'm dealing with a summer client and it's not going well, the meaning is because I'm bringing glory to God. Even when they're saying, if you don't want us, tell us not to be there. Right, Avery? Right, okay, yeah. And also my absolutes and my priorities provide accountability to me. Because if I don't have those, I'm just going all over the place. What matters and stuff like that. So when I look at unwilling to compromise the important, the two foundational elements are your priorities and your absolutes. So let's get some things out of the way. So when you're unwilling to compromise the important, it allows you to be this. This is so paradoxical that you're like, that doesn't make sense. It's opposite, but it's the same. When you're unwilling to compromise the important, it provides you to be teachable. You will be teachable. Like what? You'll be teachable because you know what you believe, and you're going to be okay to say, okay, I can learn some new things with that. You're going to be adaptable. You're going to be approachable, and you're going to be accepting. A lot of times when people hear the word unwilling to compromise the important, you see stuff that's painted on the rock that says stuff about LGBT, and then you see the other side of that going, what they're saying, God hates those. And I'm like, wait a second, there's two different things there. And somebody last night in a meeting mentioned that, and I thought about that this day. I'm accepting a people, not their sin, accepting a people because my absolute is that God loves everyone and that everyone was created in God's image. See how that changes that? Some people would look at this and go, yeah, he's telling us to be unwilling to do anything, be unwilling to compromise anything. So that means that I am who I am and just deal with it. No, that's not what it is. When you know who God created you to be, you're more teachable, you're more adaptable, you're more approachable, and you're more accepting. Because you know the important and you don't worry about the knucklehead stuff, the nonsense. So those are some things that are important before you. So what are your priorities and your absolutes? So I've narrowed it down to a couple things. There's a lot of things that could go under this. So we'll start with priorities. Your priorities is usually your role and your people. I would challenge you, do not have more than 5 to 7 priorities. When I went to an event out in Oregon, it's called Building Champions, and it was the idea of like developing a life plan. And it was like, write out your priorities. And the first time I did it, I had 13 priorities. I don't know why 13, that's a bad number. Hotels don't even have the number 13. So I had 13 priorities, and the guy looked at me and said, Brian, that's way too many. You're not going to be able to do it. Have 5 to 7 priorities. So maybe right now it's school's one, family's one, friends is another, church is another. You know, maybe some your personal development, which could be exercising, reading, different things. Have those priorities and then invest in them. Some of you in this room are in the financial area and you're going to do investing. But my dad always said, it's like, Brian, if you want to retire, you have to invest today. If you wake up at year 64 and a half and go, okay, I'm going to retire in 6 months, but you've done no work, you're going to retire at McDonald's. It's just the way it's going to be. Same thing with your priorities. If you say your family's a priority, invest in your family today so that 30 years from now, you've got this big bank account that your family trusts you even if you go through a crisis. All right? So those are your priorities, and they'll change. Some will fall off. They're, like you said, some of you are seniors. In a few short days, you're no longer going to be a student at a university. You're going to be a staff member. So maybe it goes from school to work. You see, some things fall off, but some things are always consistent. So what are your convictions? What are your absolutes? I think that narrows down just to your convictions. And if you're not sure of what you believe, you are going to be like a wave tossed upon the sea. If you don't know what you believe, there are a lot of people out there that do know what they believe, and they're going to be able to come to you and get you to compromise, and not because they're trying to do bad to you. It's just because they're sharing what they believe. So as Christ followers, if you're not investing every single day in what truth is in your convictions, then you're going to get pushed off of that. So for me, my conviction, I share with you about never being in behind closed doors with somebody of the opposite sex. I just can't make exceptions. There's times that staff members who are friends of mine come in and they need to talk about, I'll always stand up, crack the door. I always will. It's a conviction. If I start one time not doing that, it doesn't become a conviction. So what are those absolutes? You know, the absolutes are your convictions. What are your priorities? That's family, friends, whatever it might be for you. Okay? So how can you be unwilling to compromise the important? We're going to end here. I think it starts with awareness. You got to identify it. Okay, you got to identify what are those priorities, what are those convictions. Identify it. Be okay with that. Know that. Be that Berean that goes, okay, I believe this. Now, why do I believe this? And how do I prove that? And how do I keep learning that that is the thing? So you identify them. How do I identify my priorities and I invest in it? So that brings up the buy-in part. So once I've identified the buy-in part is I'm investing in it. Okay, I want to retire one day. Yes, I know I made the joke. I want to retire and drive boats at Disney. But I want to retire one day, and that means we have the investments in that is I went and refinanced our mortgage and we lost a couple years off of it. So I don't owe as many years now. So now it's going to be closer to actually well before retirement that we don't owe anything on the house. I'm investing money in my 403B. I'm ready to retire because I want to get to 65 and not go, oh crap, what do I do now? Same thing with your priorities. Invest in them. Your convictions, invest in them. If your faith is your conviction, invest in that. Spend time with the Lord. Spend time in your word. The last one is ownership, which that means, really, let me be careful to be very clear of this, is you really don't own anything. We just steward things. So after I've made it aware that I want my family to be my priority, my buy-in is I'm going to spend time with them, I'm going to invest in them, I'm going to talk to them, I'm going to provide for them. The ownership is going to be that that's my family and nothing is going to cause me to compromise that priority in my life. As a resolute leader, as a resolute person, if you want purposeful action and you want to be that person that can be counted on, you have to identify those priorities and those absolutes that you're unwilling to compromise on. And there are going to be times that you have to walk away from things because they're asking you to compromise. That's okay. Some people at the time, when you walk away, you're going to be like, that's the dumbest thing, but they'll respect you because you're consistent, you're reliable, you're dependable, you're courageous in what you do. So when you're unwilling to compromise the important, it doesn't mean that you shut everybody else out. It means that you have direction and meaning and focus and accountability on your priorities and on your absolutes.